Hey everybody, welcome to comicbook.com. We're actually here on our YouTube channel. Tonight we're interviewing Ren Bertrand to talk about Vic Carrabotta's Starlady. Sorry, I just about messed that up. Really a cool project out on IndieGoGo. So I'm Aaron Clutter, Editor-in-Chief and CEO of Comic Booked, and with me on the phone is Ren Bertrand. Ren?
Hey, how you doing?
Well, thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. So we're going to talk about this project. This is a really cool project. A lot of the times you see up and coming artists, up and coming writers, and people trying to break into the comic book scene. And in this case, it's really kind of the opposite of that. You got somebody who's been in the comic book business for years, years and
hmm
years, and he's really just never had his big break. So you want to
No,
talk a little
not
bit
really.
about your background first, Ren? Where do you come from as far as getting into comics and really what drew you to this project? And then we'll talk about Vic and we'll talk about the Starlady.
What got me into comics? That's a loaded question. My best friend when I was growing up, who I'm still friends with now, I've known since I was in third grade, is a phenomenal artist. So is his mom and his two brothers, and they were into comic books, and they got me into it. And every Sunday morning, my mom would wake up early and go grocery shopping. And this was back in the olden days when you would buy your comic books from that wire rack.
Yep,
And boy, if I would go there and help her, load the groceries and so forth, she'd buy me a comic book. So that's what I would do every Sunday.
that's pretty cool.
Um, Starting at about maybe, probably 9, 10 years old.
Okay,
So that's what got me into comic books. So
so then from there, you became a writer. So you want to talk about what got you into writing, what got you interested in doing that as a career, and then how that transitioned into comics. And you had a pretty good story about that. I thought that was great.
um, well, um, I've always been interested in just entertaining people. I really love to make people laugh, and that kind of transitioned into um, writing. And I would write here and there. Just I would write stories to just entertain my mother, really. And when I was in college, I took a creative writing class and was tutored by a good friend of mine that I had known since high school, and she, I believe, is works for the New York Times now as an editor.
Wow.
And she kind of pushed me. She always told me, Ren, you need to do this. You're good at this, and so forth. But I was in college taking veterinary science classes, and I took the creative writing class as an elective, thinking it would be just an easy credit, and turns out I was failing it because I wasn't really giving it the attention that it really needed. And my professor believed in my writing and told me that I just needed to write her a short story towards the end of the semester, and if she liked it, she would give me the C to pass. And so I titled it Story for a C, being a
Nice.
smart aleck.
Yeah.
And she read it. She read it and she loved it, and she gave me a B, actually. So
Nice.
I ended up submitting that to a writing contest, and I didn't win, but they published it on their site, and that kind of gave me the motivation to be like, maybe I am good at this. So I would
Very
just
cool.
do it in my spare time. So
Awesome. So this is your first comic book endeavor, right?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, it is. I met Vic, actually. Had written a script. I was looking for an artist. I had been trolling the internet and going to like Zwall.org and places for artists to meet writers and writers to meet artists, and I was getting nowhere. And I was working on another project with my best friend back home who lives in New York. I live in South Carolina, and we would correspond through email and phone calls and so forth. And I wanted to work with somebody I could meet face to face because I just felt it would be easier. So I put an ad out on Craigslist, and Vic responded, oddly enough, and lived in the same city I lived in. So I went over to his house and gave him the script I wrote, and like within 5 minutes of meeting him, I knew that it was wrong. It was the wrong script for him after I had seen his portfolio. And so I asked him if there was any projects or ideas that he had that he would like developed by a writer, and he told me about Starlady and whatnot, and showed me like storyboards that he had written that he had shown to like Sidney Pollack, and Sidney Pollack was like, you need to write a screenplay and you need to get this out there and so forth. So I went home that same weekend and wrote the script, and then met him on like a Monday, and he loved it, and we started working on it, and that was 3 years ago.
Wow. That's really cool. I mean, it's always neat to hear the stories of kind of how a project, got started. And I know this project really started a lot longer before that, right? But because it was kind of Vic's legacy. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. He started trying to develop this idea in 1986. I think was the first when he wrote the storyboard, and he had a couple of writers, like published writers, try to write the screenplays and so forth, and that was part of the information that he gave me. And I read through it, and I was like, I really appreciate all the information you gave me, but as a writer, I need to know what about this you didn't like, so I can write something that you will like.
Right.
And I never really got a straight answer, so I was like, well, I'm new at this. I'm just gonna go ahead and wing it. So I just went with my heart, and he ended up loving it. So
very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Vic a little bit. So Vic's been in comics for years. I mean, as long as Stan Lee and really from what a lot of us consider the dawn of comics. What are some of the things he's worked on?
He actually worked with Atlas Comics, and Atlas evolved into Marvel, and that was in like the late 50s, early 60s, and Vic worked on what was really popular back then was before superheroes became wicked popular, was like westerns and like the sci-fi kind of, mystery sort of stories, and that's what he worked on.
Cool.
And then he was working for Atlas for a while, and his family ended up moving down south to Columbia, South Carolina from New York. And when that happened, back in that day, it would have been really difficult to try to do what he was doing in New York from that great distance. I mean, now we have FedEx and email and so forth, and that's how it's done now. But back then, it would have been virtually impossible. So he kind of got into advertising and marketing and so forth, and worked for Disney and Coca-Cola and, stuff like that. So he kind of got out of the comic book business at that point, but, it was always art, he was art directors and so forth, so.
Wow. But it's interesting to hear, a very rich history. He's been through a lot of different things and a lot of experience in his background that brings him to Starlady.
Yeah. The things, and Starlady's a woman, obviously, but her essence is Vic. Like, she's very giving and very selfless, and he is too. I mean, he just is. He's crippled himself a couple of times financially, just trying to help out, the underdog, and he's just one of the best people I know. Like, aside from this comic book thing, like as a friend, he'd give you the shirt off his back in a hot second with little to no thought. He's just a good person, and I'm a better person just for knowing him.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so all of that. Let's talk about Starlady now. So we have an IndieGoGo campaign that we're promoting here. I want to definitely get our viewers to go check it out. Commit some of your money. You guys all have money out there, right? So, $10 gets you a thank you card drawn by Vic. Pretty cool, with Starlady thanking you for your contribution. $25 gets you a window decal, which is really neat, and the thank you card, right?
Yeah.
And then for the $50 level, you get a full color first copy of the first edition comic of Starlady, which I'm leaning towards that. I think for my contribution for this one, it's a really neat project. I love the art and the story. So you told us a little bit about Starlady. You know that she's a very giving and loving person. And can you give us some background of who she is and what her powers are?
She, what really drew me to this was that the idea in itself, there's not violence like, a lot of the superhero comics that you read now. It's all fighting and guns and swords and special powers and so forth. But what she does is she kind of she combats her adversaries with love and an understanding and acceptance. She gets them to see what they're doing is wrong and makes them kind of understand what they're doing is wrong and kind of heals it that way, And
that's cool.
It is cool because I'm a father. I've got 2 kids, and they're older and they're starting to want to get into comic books, and I would go to the comic book store and try to buy them books, and it's just filled with violence and foul language, and this is super clean. There's no gratuitous violence. There's no cuss words, and I'm proud to give it to my kids and be like, yeah, this is what Daddy wrote. So.
Yeah,
I think it's a good selling point. Absolutely,
that is for sure.
I mean, nowadays it's just you turn on the news and it's all negative and it never really leans towards the positive, and you're just overwhelmed, and movies and so forth. That I think something clean is really what this world needs.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just like the world needs Starlady, the world needs a little bit of positive and a little bit of peace,
Yep, it's pretty cool. So this will get this project will get we get it off the ground, and it'll give us the first issue, right?
Right.
And then what are the plans right now for a continuing series if this is successful?
Well, I've got the second issue about halfway done. And our hope is that the first issue takes off and gives us the funds to keep this going and keeps Vic's idea and Vic's legacy and the essence of who he is at his heart alive.
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like
great.
I feel like what he's done in reference to comic books. He deserves this shot, and so does this idea. Absolutely. I think we need it now more than ever.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing we talked about before was, I've done a lot of these, a lot of interviews with a lot of creators and a lot of different projects over the last few years. And, it's always the ones that are, somebody's heart is just in them that really draw me You know, may not be the best artwork, although this was good. I'm not saying this isn't, but sometimes it's like, yeah, the artwork's so, but the writing's good, but the story is just, you can tell that they're just so invested in that story that you want to support it. And it doesn't have to be, you know, the violence and and everything that you see in some of the modern comics. It's just, you know, sometimes drawing back to that, really that era that Vic came from in comics, that was more, I don't know what you'd even call it, you know,
Classic.
yeah, that's the only word, the classic. Right? So going back to a
Absolutely.
classic style of comics for sure, and we need that. And there's so
The
much, you
hmm
know, there's so much
the
of
good,
that. Sorry, go ahead.
the good guy, just doing good things and helping people and so forth, and that's how it started. You know, with Captain America and Superman. You know, those books were super clean, and then you
Yeah,
know, as things evolve, it gets, you know, I think people's view of it gets a little bit muddied and so forth. And I just, you know, like I said, when I pitched him my idea, and I'm not, I'm not gonna lie or pretend that I don't write things that I'm not, that is not like this Starlady comic, because I absolutely do, and I'm working on projects right now that are nothing like it, and they're more in tune to what's out now, absolutely. But what really drew me to this and what motivated me was, you know, looking at his art, and I feel like in comic books, like that medium, I think is really interesting, like from an artistic standpoint. I don't think it really gets. It is now getting the credit it deserves, but I always felt like people just looked at it as like a childish sort of thing and wasn't
sure.
really respected as an art form. But I always have, and I think that the art should absolutely complement the writing. They should be a symbiotic relationship. So
Yeah,
when I saw his art, I had to tailor my writing accordingly. And his art it wasn't violent. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't foul, and so I couldn't soil his art with writing that didn't agree with it, if that makes sense at all.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, and it's cool. I mean, wholesome was kind of the word I was thinking of earlier, and I just
Absolutely, man.
couldn't get it off my
Absolutely.
tongue. But yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
it was just a different,
Chicken and dumplings, man. This is chicken and
right,
dumplings.
right. Well, and with so much nostalgia now, you know, we have so much nostalgia, so much want for that retro, whatever, you know, what was old, and, I mean, there's no reason you can't bring this back. You know, comics
Mhm.
like Key Comics and some of these older companies that did like Flash Gordon and those things, you know, they're all coming back. They've made a comeback with the Phantom and the Shadow. You know, they've all made a comeback,
Yeah.
and
The spirit.
so
Absolutely.
yep, it's what people want now. They want
Mhm.
that feeling that they had when they were a kid reading a comic book or reading the Sunday paper. You know, they want that feeling. So this is definitely a
Mhm.
project I feel like could give that to them. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
All
absolutely.
right.
Like one of my go-to books, when I'm stuck in a rut and I'm trying to figure out like a panel layout in reference to the writing, I always go back to Alan Moore's Watchmen. It's just my
Mm.
Bible. And that won the Will Eisner Award. And as I was working with Vic, I just mentioned Will Eisner, and Vic's real humble, and I don't even know if he really knows the people he worked with, how big they are. And he's like, "Oh, I remember Will." And I was like, "I'm
Huh.
sorry, what?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I I used to work with Will Eisner, and in fact, Jack Kirby taught him how to ink."
Wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
and he's just so cavalier about, he's not name dropping. He's just like, "Oh yeah, and he worked with John Romita Sr.
Wow.
and he doesn't call him John Romita Sr. He's just like, "Oh, John." you know, and I'm sitting here staring at this guy like, and you like my writing?
Yeah. That's
It's
something.
just,
That's saying
it
something.
is, man. It
That's
is,
cool.
man. It's just a humbling experience. Like the whole thing is just very humbling.
That's awesome. But
It's surreal, man. It is.
well, yeah, and it's a piece of history. It's a piece of comic book history that you're getting to absorb by being with him and working with him, and that's the coolest part. I think even if even if nothing comes of this, which we're really going to push this, and we want this project to succeed for you guys. But if nothing comes of it, you got that experience. You got to
Mhm.
work with someone who helped to found what we have now as modern comics. It's amazing.
Oh, it is, and that's never been lost on me since day one, and I've always maintained like the headset, like you know, eh, Ren, if this stops now, no matter what stage of the evolution of this project, if this stops now, like you you accomplished something, like working with this guy, being his friend, and like it wasn't always about the comics. Like I would take him to the VA, help him go grocery shopping and so forth. Like it's not your typical writer artist relationship. Like this guy's my friend. Like he's my
Yeah,
friend. You know
that's
what I
cool.
mean? And like he's had two heart surgeries for a pacemaker, and I've gone to the hospital, to visit him every single time, and homeboy's recovering from a major surgical event, and he's talking about Starlady and
Wow.
what happens next and so forth, and he motivates me. He's 87 years old, and
Jeez,
he's got a spark, man. This dude, he's got a spark.
that's cool. That's cool. Well, I know in talking to Joseph, he said maybe we could get Nick on the show to talk a little bit. So that would be pretty awesome. So we'll see if that maybe happens in the next couple weeks. Um, but yeah, this has
Oh,
really
wait
been
till you
great talking with you.
wait till you hear his voice.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, very thick New York City accent. It's
Oh,
oh man, he could read the phone book and I'd just listen to him.
that's funny. That's cool. Well, I look forward to that. I think that would be really neat. So I bet he's got some stories. So.
Oh goodness
All right.
gracious, you have no idea.
All right. Well, Ren, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about Vic Carrabotta's legacy here with Starlady, and we really want this IndieGoGo campaign to take off. So for everybody out there who's watching, get over to IndieGoGo, check out Vic Carrabotta's legacy, Starlady, and we'll have a link in the description for this video. You can also go over to comicbook.com, and on our main page on the left side bar, you'll see the very first ad is for Vic Carrabotta's legacy. So click there. Go right to the IndieGoGo campaign, donate some money or contribute, and help this become a reality. Because this is just a really cool project, a great book, and it's really something that we need. It's just hands down, it's an awesome book. Looks awesome. All right, Ren, do you have any other final words for our viewers out there?
Just visit the site, like and share it as much as possible. Vic is 88 years old, and honestly, this is probably his last contribution to comic books, and obviously the people watching and listening to this obviously love comics, and he was the beginning, man. He was there with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and if you love comics, you gotta respect where he came from, and he needs this. He needs this. So
That's awesome. Okay.
we would really appreciate any help at all. Even if you're not donating, just like and share it, and the more people that see it, the more chances it could come. So.
Yep. Well, there's what do we have? 18 days left on the project. The goal's set at
Yes,
12,000. You got 1,050 so far, and that's just from
Mhm.
16 backers. So we'll push this
Yep.
out there. We'll get as many people as we can interested in the project, and who knows, we could see that goal in a week. I've seen it happen before. So it's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
whatever comic book that you are going to the comic book store today to buy, just save that $10 or whatever, and
Yeah, sometimes it costs
back.
$10 for one book.
Yeah,
Depends on what book you're buying, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
You get one signed.
That's right. That's the best thing. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, thanks a lot again, Ren. I appreciate it. And like I said before, down the road, who knows what kind of projects you'll be working on? Maybe we'll talk to you again.
That's my hope. Hopefully, we get to talk when Starlady issue 2 comes out.
Exactly. That would be awesome. All right. So, everybody out there, thanks for watching. Again, check the links in the description for the video. This video will also be in an article on our website. Go over to comicbook.com and check it out. Right there on the front page is a link to the IndieGoGo campaign. You click right to it. Any questions you guys have, send them to admin@comicbook.com. Happy to answer questions. Also, you can leave questions in the comments here on the video, or questions in the comments on the article, or find me on Twitter. I'm out there. Ren, can they stalk you on social media as well?
Oh, sure. I'm a lonely man. I'd love to be stalked. I'm a comic book geek trying to bust into the industry. you think I wouldn't love some people? Some attention here.
All right, so we'll have some links to Ren's information out on social media as well. So all of you fellow comic book people can hunt him down. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks again, Ren. And thank you guys for watching. And go out there and read more comics.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks a lot.